national movements, political meeting, political education in the San Fernando Town Hall Auditorium. Ladies and gentlemen, normally we would be outside, but we decided to bring us inside to deal with them from left to right, from every corner of this room. And as they say in the Baptist tradition, every corner and in the bounding center, we bringing them in here. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin, I ask you to stand for the national anthem. Please remain standing for the opening prayer. Good evening to everyone. Good evening to the head table, but a very special good evening to a special gentleman. Our Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, a very special good evening to you. As we gather to pray, I would like each one, bow your head, bow your hearts, and give it to God. We thank you, Lord, for this time and for this hour. We give you praise and thanks because you are worthy to be praised. Many would have liked to be here, but for some reason, they are not. So we have to thank God. We have to give him all the glory, all the honor that is due to him. We thank you this evening that we have gathered together for the country's business. And so we hope this evening, whatever would be said and done, would be said and done to your honor and to your glory. And we pray that you taking, listen to what is being said, try to understand. This evening, I thank everyone for coming. The Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, may God continue to bless him. I say continue to bless him, not to bless him, continue to bless him. Because he is blessing him, he's still here with us. Don't matter what, he's among us this evening. Remember all of the Parliament this evening. Every member, each one in his or her respective office. Remember our mayor. Watch over him and keep him. No matter what it might be, give it to God. God is the only answer this evening. Mr. Regrello, in a special way. Take the man's servant and keep him for keeping sake, dear God. Watch over us, dear God, Trinidad and Tobago land. Look at the situation, dear God. Look at the situation, Jesus, but you can do it this evening. So we ask you whatsoever is to be done. Do it in your honor and your glory, God. Open up our hearts this evening. Open up our hearts and let the love shine this evening. My God and my Redeemer this evening, I thank you for all that are here. I thank you for each one. And may God touch us individually, and may God touch us collectively. This evening, Jesus, I pray for Marvella West. I pray for San Fernando. I pray for all the surrounding areas. I pray for all the PNM people, the PNM family this evening. Bring our hearts in one accord. I pray for the opposition. May you spin them around and bring them to consciousness, that they would join with our government and we would be number one. I pray this evening that you speak to them. If they are listening, please get to know God. Everything is possible with Almighty God this evening. And so as we gather here, you brought us that we may sit and listen, that we may give God glory, because he's God and God alone. And I thank you for him. One day he sent his son to us. He loves us, and we must love him too. So this evening, may we sit and enjoy and thank you. May God bless us all.
Thank you very kindly, Bishop Bradshaw. Ladies and gentlemen, today's education session will see us getting political education from a battery of speakers of the People's National Movement. But to welcome you today will be none other than the only true Attorney General that we've had in the past 7 years. And ladies and gentlemen, please note that I've said in the past 7 years, the only true Attorney General that we have had in the past 7 years. The only true Attorney General that we've had for the last 2 years. And ladies and gentlemen, none other than the Member of Parliament for San Fernando West, the person who has an agenda for the legislation in our parliament, the only person who has continuously ensured that the legislative agenda of the People's National Movement and of the people of Trinidad and Tobago makes sense. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome our Attorney General, the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago, who will not be in any court unless it is to fight a case against former Attorneys General. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Faris Al-Rawi.
Ladies and gentlemen, our political leader and Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, welcome to San Fernando City Hall, sir. To the distinguished members sitting at the head table, my colleague, Major General, retired Edmund Dillon, Minister of National Security, the Minister of Planning, the Honorable Camille Robinson Regis, the Minister of Energy, Minister Franklin Khan, the boundless, energetic, fun-loving brother of mine, Stuart Young, minister straddling 2 ministries most capably, when in fact it's really 3 right now, as he sits in public admin, Attorney General, Office of Prime Minister, and man everywhere. I recognize His Worship the Mayor, the first citizen of San Fernando. I recognize sitting in this audience, Mr. Ken Ferguson, past Mayor of the City of San Fernando. I recognize my cabinet colleagues, the Minister of Housing, the member for San Fernando East, Randall Mitchell, the ever hard-working, indomitable Kazim Hussein, Minister of Local Government. I recognize the chairman of everything supposedly in the East, as he calls himself, the Minister of Health, Minister Terence Dial Singh, Senator Daniel Dookie, the chairman of WASA, who has just joined us, Romney Thomas, and to all of you wonderful San Fernando ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Political 101 as we set in tonight to discuss some of our business. I'm here to facilitate a conversation tonight. After all, this is our home. This is San Fernando. Randall and I both share the seats next to each other. And so tonight we asked our distinguished Prime Minister and our colleagues to come and do some of the talking. It would be rude to be in your own home and dominate the stage. It is important for us to get to understand the agenda that we're working on. You've just seen us complete the budget. We have demonstrated in our budgeting that we are giving value for money accounting. In the value for money accounting, we are demonstrating what we thought we had, what we actually have, what we're working to have, where we hope to be. When we came into office, we left a budget of close to $63 billion. We have climbed our budget down to $52 billion. We have done that maintaining full employment in this country, debt limit up to our noses as the UNC borrowed every black cent available. They took our dividends and profits from the natural gas company to the tune of $16 billion. They raised our debt to GDP ratio, making borrowing more expensive. But more particularly, they made some decisions. For instance, they made a decision labeled as a good one. Come and invest in oil and gas, they told the big players. We'll give you a write-off. It encourages people to come and invest. But typical UNC style, they didn't bother to think it through. So they told the oil and gas companies, take a tax holiday. Don't pay taxes, write off your losses. But they didn't give them a cap. And what that means, very simply put, is they failed to put a cap on the amount of write-off that can go year to year. So our oil and gas money, the corporation taxes earned from oil and gas, dropped from $22 billion to $1.9 billion. $22 billion to $1.9 billion. Oil and gas revenue contributed to 33% of our earnings. It has dropped to 1.3% of our national earnings. With that money, we in San Fernando ask, how can we build houses? How can we fix homes? How do we clean our rivers? How do we collect garbage? How do we improve national security? But I want to say we've done well. And I'll tell you why I say that. We've done well. Today's scholarships were announced. Take a look and add up the scholarships in San Fernando alone, ladies and gentlemen, where we top the whole country collectively. Take a look at our success in a cooperation with the members of Parliament for East and West working together to ensure that we didn't suffer the floods that suffered when Brett came the second time round. It's not by mistake. But I want to tell you, in looking at the value for money and inviting our guests tonight to talk to certain parts of what we're asking them to talk about, I'll just speak for a little bit on the role and function of the office that is the Office of the Attorney General. You notice in our government, we don't talk about my ministry and I. You notice we don't do that. The Office of the Attorney General has, for the first time in the history of its structure, a merger with Legal Affairs. Technically, we have 1,142 employees. But this office is a significantly large office. And in running this office, in running the 15 bodies under this office, because I'm not including the staff of the judiciary, the industrial court, the equal opportunities, the tribunals, we're not including any of that. But we have responsibility to do all of those projects. Quite simply put, constitutionally, we have to do the civil arrangements, all of the civil litigation. We have to coordinate with the criminal law department, which is the office of the DPP. We have to do all of the legislation for Trinidad and Tobago. We have to advise the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. We function in the role as prime leader in anti-terrorism, anti-money laundering. Basically, it's a 24-hour job. And the truth is, whilst we have had massive successes this year in opening the doors to children and family court arrangement for the first of its kind, soon to come live in, God willing, the month of November, doing the criminal justice reform package that we did, improving the DPP's office as we have done, improving the prosecutorial function as we have done, adding criminal proceedings rules as we have done, ensuring that cases can move faster in the criminal justice system as we are doing in a way that has never happened before. There's a very important role that we function and perform inside of that, and it's anti-corruption. And those of you who are paying attention to the script that our opponents have, bear in mind the words that the Honorable Prime Minister used yesterday in his press conference. When asked about criticisms coming to the Office of the Attorney General, he said, that's nothing surprising. These are people who are mortally afraid of what is coming. And tonight, we are going to hear some of that. But I will allow that conversation to happen in the proper form and fashion. I just want to leave you with an absolute assurance, ladies and gentlemen. This government is very conscious that it has to perform. We know that the people of Trinidad and Tobago are tired of talk. Our Prime Minister says to us, it is not what you promise that will be on gauge and measure in 2020 when a next general election is due. It is what you have accomplished. Tonight we're going to hear from the Minister of National Security. I see a lot of my beloved brothers and sisters from Embarcadero here tonight, from Marabella here tonight. I've seen a couple from the Hatters area here tonight. I want to tell you, crime and security is a #1 purpose for us. And the Ministry of National Security is in very tight coordination with the Office of the Attorney General. The Minister of National Security has been side by side on our anti-terrorism work, on our border protection work, on bringing to life DNA for the first time since it came onto the books of this country from 1999 come forward, in putting simple things like toilets into prisons to deal with unconstitutional living conditions, in making sure our security services agency is performing. How many of you have noticed? An allegation of kidnapping and an arrest a day after. An allegation of a murder and an arrest 2 days after or 3 days after, a tip-off for a drug bust, and 2 policemen caught in the act, allegedly. Haven't you noticed a little bit of a change? You think anybody wants to talk about that? Well, it didn't happen by mistake, ladies and gentlemen. And our Honorable Minister of National Security is going to talk to some of that. So I ask you to pay attention to our contributions from our colleagues tonight, our guests in San Fernando. The last time I had the pleasure of sitting on a stage with Stuart, it was before the general election, as we sat on a stage in a car park down by Gulfview. He brought blessings then, he continues to bring blessings now. The last time the Prime Minister spoke on a stage, it was right here. The last time the Minister of National Security spoke, it was in support of San Fernando right here. So let's pay attention. I want to assure you, in the months ahead on the legislative and anti-corruption and anti-criminality drive, you're going to see a combination of common sense, hard work, good legislation, and most definitely operational procedures. So let's make sure that our guests deliver what I know you want to hear tonight. And I ask you to give them warm San Fernando welcomes and to enjoy tonight's proceedings. Welcome to you all. Thank you very much.
You see what I told you? A true Attorney General, ladies and gentlemen. An Attorney General that has been working hand in hand with the National Security Minister, not fighting, as we saw in a previous administration. But ladies and gentlemen, the French have a saying, and it is, les plus de choses changeant plus, elles restant les mêmes. You all didn't know I could speak French too, eh? And you know what that means? The more things change, the more they stay the same. And my friends, the UNC did not fail to disappoint us yesterday. When it was not Wade Mark talking through the top of his head about things he knows not, and moving from speaker to opposition senator, we now have the other spectacle in the Senate yesterday of the former governor of the central bank being sworn in as an opposition senator. And ladies and gentlemen, not only does Trinidad and Tobago have this unseemly parade of temporary opposition senators through the upper house, where every Monday morning a new person is sworn in to speak on a particular issue, but we had to listen to the newest UNC economics poster boy, the fired central bank governor, Jawala Rambaran. If ever there was an exercise in hypocrisy, an exercise in pure, unadulterated disrespect for the people of Trinidad and Tobago and for the sanctity of the upper house, it was Jawala's appearance in the Senate. Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine the spectacle of a former central bank governor coming into the upper house to criticize the actions of the government and his successor? But then again, that is UNC style. And it is not entirely strange, because you remember, we had a former minister becoming a central bank governor, then becoming a leader of a political party, then becoming a minister again. You remember Dukaran? Can you imagine what that does for the confidence that the banking institutions internationally and investors internationally have in Trinidad and Tobago? Jawala's presence and contribution in the Senate yesterday is a severe indictment on the entire UNC. But I guess it's a situation of hell hath no fury, like a Jawara scorned. But Jawala didn't come there on his own. It's Kamala who brought him there. And she has to bear the brunt of that responsibility. but it is also his personal integrity that we have to question. But let me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that Jawala had the effrontery and the audacity to cheapen the office of central bank governor, and he is now easily seen as trading that office for political support. Imagine Jawala speaking about economic geometry. Jawala, where his very presence in the House could be construed as a result of a similar exercise. I wonder what you call someone who jumps from the bed of the central bank to the bed of a political party. I wonder if, anyway, let me just say, But in the same breath, tonight I want to commend our Minister of Public Utilities, Senator Robert Lee Hunt, who in his maiden contribution destroyed Jawala and his arguments. Jawala was like a little puppy dog with his tail between his legs at the end of Senator Lee Hunt's contribution. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the type of destruction that we want to see in the criminal arena. And that is why our political leader and the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago has appointed an officer and a gentleman as the Minister of National Security. Ladies and gentlemen, without let or hindrance, Major General Edmund Dillon has been assiduously doing his job as Minister of National Security. He has been doing that without let or hindrance. And ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome to the podium the Minister of National Security, the Member of Parliament for Point Fortin, Major General Edmund Dillon.
Thank you very much, most kindly, for those warm words of introduction. Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the Honorable Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, my cabinet colleagues, MPs, Your Worship the Mayor, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, those who are listening on the radio and otherwise, a very pleasant good evening to you all. Thank you very much, because I draw my energy from you. It's indeed an honor and a privilege for me this evening. But I want to thank you very much for your presence here, because I know you had several choices. And the fact that you choose to be here this evening to listen to us, I want to thank you very much for being here this evening. I also want to thank you for allowing me the privilege to share with you the issues in national security. But before I do so, I want to publicly and sincerely offer my condolences, and of course the government and people of Trinidad and Tobago, to prison officer Glenford Gardner, who died in tragic circumstances last night. I offer those condolences to his family, to his co-workers, and those who knew him. And indeed, we share their loss. For Glenford Gardner volunteered as a prison officer, as many of us do. And in service, he died a heinous death. And I want to condemn those people who have carried out that type of action, to the extent where I've instructed the Commissioner of Police to do what is required immediately to bring those to justice with support of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we cannot condone those type of actions. For any life lost is dear to us. Because there is somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's father. And therefore we condemn those type of actions. And I can tell you that the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the Ministry of National Security will do all that it can to reduce the crime rate in Trinidad and Tobago. I can promise you that, ladies and gentlemen. The Ministry of National Security is one of the largest and most complex public organizations. It hosts about 9 divisions and about 16 mandatory units, and roughly about over 20,000 employees in the Ministry of National Security. There is no area of public policy that is as important in terms of money, in terms of resources, in terms of manpower, as the Ministry of National Security. One only has to look daily in the newspaper, in the media, print and electronic, and there's always some issue of national security. Because, ladies and gentlemen, it is dear to all of us. Issues of national security is dear to each and every one of us. And therefore, we must continue to play a part in those issues. As we consider the issues of national security, we realize that in dealing with crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago, it must be a long campaign, ladies and gentlemen. Because when we look at the world today, we see what is happening in North America, in Las Vegas quite recently. We see what's happening in Spain, in London. A review of the regional crime situation will tell you Jamaica has gone past 900 murders to date. We have seen an increase in murders in small countries like St. Kitts, Antigua, Barbados, Guyana. And we're grappling here in Trinidad and Tobago with the murder rate because the barometer by which we are measured. We're grappling here with a crime situation just like any other country in the world. One thing that is important to us is that there is no quick fix, ladies and gentlemen. There is no quick fix to the crime situation. But it must be done based on a question of policy and strategy. Because national security is about identifying the threats that affects our people, our territory, our values, and our national interests. And it's about the government policies and strategies that are determined by the government to treat those threats to our interests and to our people. And more importantly, it's about how we utilize our people, how we build our institutions, how we develop tactics, techniques, and strategies to treat those issues that confront us. And so this government is a government that deeply concerns with the crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. And because we understand that it must be based on a proactive position and not a reactive one, in that it is a long haul, it's a war on crime, a war on criminality, a war on violence, we have to start from the policy level. And you would realize that governments before us did not have that sort of framework. And that's the reason why they would have changed 5 or so ministers of national security, because they were reactive. And you know, they were complaining at one time to remove this minister of national security. Now, if removing the minister of national security was the solution, we would have inherited a very peaceful Trinidad and Tobago, ladies and gentlemen. 5. And so we have developed the Ministry of National Security along that framework, has recently done an exercise to bring to bear the national security policy of Trinidad and Tobago. National security policy and implementation strategy, which is being refined at this point in time to be placed before the National Security Council. That has never been done, ladies and gentlemen, by no other government, especially the previous one, ladies and gentlemen. The National Security Policy and Implementation Strategy will set the framework that will allow us to execute our activities in the long haul, the short, medium, and long term. We have also, ladies and gentlemen, completed the strategic plan for the Ministry of National Security. Again, never done before. Never done before. And all these plans are in fact anchored, are embedded in our Vision 2030 document under the governance structure. So you see, we are aligning what we do with what's the overarching policy of our government in Vision 2030. As we continue to treat with those, we have also done our counter-terrorism strategy. And those are the framework with which would allow us to work effectively and efficiently, would allow us to be proactive in what we do. And our counter-terrorism strategy right now is before the National Security Council for its perusement and approval. And while we treat those policy issues, we drill down to the agencies of national security, so that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have completed their strategic plan during the same period, which is 1918 to 2023, a 5-year plan. Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, with assistance from the Center for Hemispheric Defense Studies in the United States, were also ready to complete their own strategic plan. Falling out from that, you will see, ladies and gentlemen, the border protection plan coming out from immigration, the maritime security plan coming out from the Defense Force, the intelligence security plan coming from the Strategic Services Agency. All these are what we're putting together because it is a long campaign, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a quick fix. So that policy will guide us. Strategy will allow us to implement effectively and efficiently so that we are all on the same music, because the agencies of national security work together in a cooperative and collaborative manner to bring a concentration of force at the right time and place. This is what we are about, ladies and gentlemen. A change. A change. If you realize our budget statement was based on a paradigm change towards sustainable development, I'm saying to you, in the area of national security, there must be a paradigm change. There's a difference in the way in which we do business, so that we bring some different kind of results to bear on the situation of crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago. This is what we're about, ladies and gentlemen. And as we continue to shape those approaches, we said, what is the state of our national security environment? It is characterized by murder, of course, because that's the barometer, again, by which we are measured by. It is characterized by illegal guns, drugs, ammunition, money laundering, transnational organized crime, trafficking in persons, among others. These are the issues that we have to treat with. And how do we treat with them? We said, let's anchor those issues along 5 strategic pillars. And those strategic pillars are to detect, to deter, to predict, to prosecute, and to rehabilitate. We said let's anchor what we do, because you have to do it in a methodological manner. We can't be hitting left, right, and center. Let's put our resources, let's anchor them against those strategic pillars. The prediction pillar is one in which we said, let us be ahead of the game. Let us be able to predict what those who are bent on doing harm to our people and our institutions. Let us put our intelligence gathering mechanism towards them. And the government is prepared to support the intelligence gathering mechanism in the prediction pillar. The National Intelligence Agency from the Strategic Services Agency, the Defense Force Intelligence Agency, the Organized Crime and Intelligence Unit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The government is prepared to provide them with what is required to be able to predict, to be able to tell in advance, to be one step of the game, what those are bent on threatening our very life and existence. And so we also look at the deterrent pillar. The deterrent pillar tells us that we must be able to deter people from committing crime, prevent them from doing so by our presence. And you would have seen an increased presence on the roadways by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. You'll have seen an increased presence in focus operations, which have been done throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago. In Point Fortin, in the southwestern peninsula, in Moruga, in Diego Martin, in Tobago. And I want to say also, as we in San Fernando West, from Mbakade all the way up, we have been working together with the Attorney General and Member for Parliament for San Fernando West to deal with issues from Mbakade all the way up. So you see a focused kind of operations. And recently we have formed the Organized Crime and Intelligence Unit, which would be treating with what we call those known individuals who continue to be on the radar and have not been touched. You know the names much more than I do. And this unit has been crafted to deal with them, and you'll see some results coming soon, because that unit will be focused and concentrated on those key, regardless of the color, whether it's white collar crime, blue collar crime, or yellow collar crime. They will be focused on them, ladies and gentlemen. You see, ladies and gentlemen, there's a whole question of understanding what we are dealing with. The other pillar is, in fact, our detection pillar. And our detection pillar is not where we want it to be at this point in time. There's always room for improvement, because detection is crucial. Detection is important. But we are prepared as a government to strengthen that detection pillar. We are prepared to strengthen what is required to increase the detection rate in Trinidad and Tobago, so that you can bring those who committed the offenses quickly and with the results at the end of the day when they appear in the courts of Trinidad and Tobago, bring them to justice. So we are prepared to strengthen the detection pillar, to give the agencies what is required. And to that extent, recently the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago has approved additional crime scene investigators in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The Cabinet has given the Commissioner of Police the authority to expand its recruitment outside of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, to bring in specialists, to employ people with the technical know-how within Trinidad and Tobago to assist him in the execution of his duties. On the detection pillar, you have seen that we have moved the process with respect to the DNA. The DNA legislation was passed in 2012. It was this government who have come into power and moved that process forward, ladies and gentlemen. We now have the DNA custodian, and he is working assiduously. Recently, the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago has passed the policy and the DNA regulations, and it soon will be laid in Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. We are an action-oriented government that moved this process forward. And that is going to speak volume in the detection rate. Because once the DNA custodian is set up and the DNA data bank is set up, with the regulations now being passed, we can now start to populate the database. We can start, by law, we will be starting with the prisoners, those who are incarcerated, because by law we can take the DNA swab from them and populate the database. And everyone subsequently arrested, on arrest, whether you're charged or not, we can take the swab and populate the database. And as we go forward, our detection rate would improve because now we can balance whatever action is committed, whoever is committed on any activity, we can put that against the database. Detection, ladies and gentlemen. That's how the process that we are moving to. And so the other pillar is the rehabilitation pillar. Because we believe that after you appear before the court and you're incarcerated, we have a duty to bring you back to some sense of normalcy so that you can again contribute as a good citizen in Trinidad and Tobago, to move you to restorative justice and rehabilitation. So those are the 5 pillars of which we are targeting our activities in the Ministry of National Security. Prediction, deterrence, detection, prosecution, rehabilitation, ladies and gentlemen. That allows us also to measure our activities and also allows us to put resources, given our stringent times, in the right place and the right time. Focus, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, the agencies of national security continues to work assiduously, continues to work to deal with issues of crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which is the lead agency for law enforcement, supported by the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, the strategic service agencies, continues to make gains and successes. Small successes as they are, but they are successes all the same. We know that the murder rate right now, at least the last count I had was 402. We're not happy about that. We cannot be happy about that. As I said before, one murder cause for concern. One murder cause for concern. When we look at the differences in reasons for murder, the lead is gang-related, then drug-related, then domestic violence, then unknown before domestic violence, I must say. And that's the order in which things are happening. Some that we can deal with proactively. It's even treating with the gangs, treating with the drugs. Some we may not be able to deal proactively because we can't be there when a domestic violence is done. But as a society, we can do something about that. As a society, we can deal with those issues. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue, we'll see some successes in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Because to date, they have recovered 847 arms, which is the highest so far of the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. And between 2015 to 2016, they have taken out 2,303 weapons off the street of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, when you look at those statistics, the important point to note is what would have happened if they did not recover those 2,303 weapons? What the damage could have been done to our society? And then when you look at the ammunition, for this year, they have recovered and seized 12,041 rounds of ammunition off the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. Between 2015 to now, they have recovered 40,457 rounds of ammunition. 40,457 rounds of ammunition off the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. As I said, look at it as if they did not do that, what would have happened? The use that these things would have been put to. And they continue to work. Because to date, they have arrested and charged 9,941 persons in Trinidad and Tobago for this year. 9,941 persons have been arrested and charged by Trinidad and Tobago Police Service for this year. Now that's based on a number of good work being done by Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Sometimes, we talk ill about them, but we have to recognize them because they are good policemen and women, ladies and gentlemen. But having arrested the 941 individuals, we now face with them going to court. The Attorney General and myself have had several meetings with the Chief Justice and the Chief Magistrate and so on to see whether or not we can work together. Because while we do the arrest, they have to go to court. And the time that these matters take, of course, cause another situation for security. Because now we have the jail to deal with. Now we have the cell to deal with. Now we have the overcrowding to treat with. And right now the remand yard has more prisoners than the convicted. But how are we treating that as a government? How are we treating that as a government? So we are going to the route of the electronic monitoring system, commonly called the bracelets. Which allows judges and magistrates an alternative type of commitment, alternative awards. So that we are providing that options. So our electronic magnetic bracelet system is being developed. The law has been passed since 2014. Again, it is this government, this People's National Government, that have moved the process forward. It's been there dormant for quite some time. And we have moved that process forward to the extent where we have already hired the deputy, the manager, and the deputy manager. We are now in the process of looking at the platforms. We are putting it out for public tender so that we can have providers bring to bear the mechanisms and so on to treat with that. So soon you'll see the electronic magnetic bracelets being placed on individuals, taking them out of the prison system. And therefore putting them in what we call that geofence area. We put them in an area, so for instance, if we put them in this hall, we put a geofence around this hall, and as soon as they move out the door, an alarm goes out, a response team comes, take them. And if they break the chain, we send them back to jail. But again, it will free up the prison system. We are moving to that, ladies and gentlemen. So we're working in tandem. The other thing that we're doing is the video conferencing center. The video conferencing center is about 80% completed right now. That again will be a game changer. You see the video conferencing center, which is built right outside the remand prison. You just walk across from the remand into the video conferencing center. What would that do for us? Yeah. That would do for us, ladies and gentlemen. It will take away the movement of persons on remand who have to leave remand prison, go to Port of Spain, go to Point Fortin, go to Siparia, go to Tobago. And it's roughly about $80 million a year it's costing us, ladies and gentlemen. That is only in transportation. Sometimes they move us off the road, and you wonder why. But I'm telling you, with the coming of the video conferencing center, that will stop, ladies and gentlemen, and that money could be well spent differently. And the other initiatives that's taken place, ladies and gentlemen, other initiatives in the Ministry of National Security. We recently received the report of the manpower audit of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service from the committee. And there are several recommendations. It's still being perused, because a nice and thick document, good work by that committee. And there are several recommendations here that I'm sure will speak volume for us as we continue to look at it I think we're going to have some game changers coming on, ladies and gentlemen. Again, you realize that it was this government that took it upon themselves to ensure that we did that man. It was in talk for quite some time. You've heard the manpower audit, how much years now? Our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. It has happened, ladies and gentlemen, by this government of Trinidad and Tobago. So you will see, ladies and gentlemen, the number of entities coming together in a cooperative and collaborative manner. Because national security is bringing a concentration of force at the right time and place to treat the issues of crime, violence, and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. We will continue to work assiduously. We'll continue to try our best, put all our resources together to ensure that the people of Trinidad and Tobago enjoy a sense of peace and stability, to allow investors to come into Trinidad and Tobago, to allow tourists to come into Trinidad and Tobago, to create that zone of peace. But we can't do it alone. We can never do it alone. The Ministry of National Security can't do it alone. Each and every one of us has a role to play in dealing with crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago. Because if we love this country, if we want to own this country, then we have to get up and play a part in dealing with crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. We cannot be bystanders. We have seen the opposition did not support measures to deal with crime and violence in Trinidad and Tobago. When I tell them in the house that they are unpatriotic because they have no loyalty to Trinidad and Tobago. As I tell them in the house, they keep saying that they are patriotic. I told them, Margaret Thatcher once said that if a lady has to continue saying that she's a lady, then she's not. You must see it by the way you talk, by the way you dress, by the way you speak, and by the way you support. And ladies and gentlemen, the only patriotic government in Trinidad and Tobago is this government. This government, ladies and gentlemen. And so I say to you, let us join together in the fight of crime and criminality and violence. Let us start by understanding we have a role to play as parents, as neighbors, as pastors, as teachers. We all have a role to play because the factory starts from the young one. At the tail end is where we have law enforcement. Let's start to stop it from the factory. Let's start to cultivate a certain sense of values in our young children so that at the end of the day, they will not resort to a life of crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago. Let's do it together, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you very much.
The words, ladies and gentlemen, of an officer and a gentleman, and I say to you tonight, that is a Minister of National Security, ladies and gentlemen. An officer and a gentleman who knows who is a lady. I can tell you that. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to repeat. 2,303 weapons removed. 40,450 rounds of ammunition removed. 9,941 persons arrested and charged. Significant work, ladies and gentlemen. And ladies and gentlemen, as I sat there, I wondered if the one in the 9,941 was Anand Ramlogan. He was arrested and charged with witness tampering. I suspect that one in the 9,941 is the former Attorney General. And ladies and gentlemen, as we sit here tonight giving you political education, I want to take the opportunity to ask the mayor of San Fernando, the first citizen of San Fernando, to bring you greetings before we continue.
My turn. Honorable Prime Minister, Member of Parliament for San Fernando West, and Attorney General, Member of Parliament for San Fernando East, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Minister of National Security, Party Chairman Minister of Planning, my predecessor, the Honorable Qasim Hussein, a new person name I'll call you this evening. Right. Parliamentary representatives, senators, members of the PNM family. Let me tell the Prime Minister that it's only in San Fernando that the PNM could call a meeting in 48 hours and have a full house. That is our commitment. 48 hours notice, get it going on San Fernando East and San Fernando West and Pointe-a-Pierre and neighboring constituencies rally to the cause. And let me add to that, it was last week or 2 weeks ago, we had to cancel a meeting due to the inclement weather. Mr. Prime Minister, there are hundreds of people outside here on that evening. They came with the umbrella and they came with the winter because they are also committed to the cause. However, I want to thank you for choosing San Fernando for tonight's venue for this very important and informative meeting. Our country stands at a pivotal point in our history. Changes on the horizon for our nation, and that will let us to steer to a better and brighter tomorrow. However, we as citizens must be ready to have the flexibility and discipline to accept these changes towards the benefit of our community and our nation. We are always aware of the financial constraints that exist today. However, thanks to the prudent leadership, skill and acumen of this government, led by the Honorable Prime Minister, I would like to emphatically state that on behalf of all citizens of San Fernando, we can all rest assured that the future of Trinidad and Tobago is safe and secured. Our national development rests on our motto of discipline, production, and tolerance. In light of this, we can see firsthand efforts of our government under the stewardship of the People's National Movement, that the return to our moorings as the nation that we all remember is close at hand. The budget that was presented to us in Parliament for the fiscal year 2017-2018 contains within it the necessary requirements to return to our nation to a level of prosperity founded in decency, efficiency, and equity. As citizens, we must all take heed to the clarion call and look beyond the petty, empty chatter of hollow voices who seek to lead us away from the prosperity that we all can achieve. We must once again become the true-blooded red, white, and black patriots of a nation founded in the principles of Dr. Eric Williams and all the party faithful who have upheld this ideal to this day. The city of San Fernando stands ready and committed to act in the best interests of our nation and under the guidance of our government led by the Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, to see the implementation of our national development policy, Vision 2030, to witness the evolution of local government reform, and to see the reformation of a country like no other in the world, and to be proud citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. All the progress of our nation has been a result of the careful planning and implementation by the People's National Movement. As Dr. Williams once said, the alternative to the PNM is chaos and confusion. I heard Mr. Dillon said a while ago about the recovery and the amount of weapons were recovered. But I want to tell you that the Southwestern Division have a 100% recovery rate. And we want to commend the San Fernando Trinidad and Tobago Police Service for the work that they've been doing in San Fernando, and the San Fernando Police is out front in terms of recovery. And I also want to commend the Minister of Planning and the Cabinet for decisions that were made in terms of our waterfront development project. We have been waiting for that for donkey years. And Madam Minister, we thank you for putting that on stream for us. It will benefit so many San Fernandians as we look forward to prosperity. We have started preparing for that plan by changing our traffic plan in San Fernando. And I'm sure the citizens here this evening can tell you the success of that plan. Like, San Fernando has been changed over because we are waiting for the activities that come with that. What we see today is the carefully crafted re-imaging of the nation of Trinidad and Tobago under the only political party capable of progress, the People's National Movement. I thank you.
you very much, Mr. Mayor. And you see why I call him one of the best mayors in Trinidad and Tobago? And I know you're all thinking because he made a good speech. I am saying that because he thanked the Minister of Planning and Development. Best mayor. But ladies and gentlemen, more seriously, Dr. Williams did say that the alternative to the PNM is chaos and confusion. And we know that to be a fact. Even our detractors know that to be a fact. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the persons in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago who has been a thorn in the side of the opposition is the person who will be coming on next to speak. He has been quietly doing his job, but he has been doing his job, ladies and gentlemen. He has been saying without contradiction that those in opposition to us are unpatriotic, and we all know that that is true. But ladies and gentlemen, the thing is that they fear him. They fear him because he is fearless. And ladies and gentlemen, he does his job with laser-like precision and focus. Tonight, he is going to educate you as the other speakers have educated you. And I want you to listen carefully. Prime Minister, I want you to listen carefully. Chairman of the PNM, I want you to listen carefully. Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, listen carefully. Minister of Housing, listen carefully. Minister of Foreign Affairs, you listen carefully. Don't talk for the Minister of Trade and Industry, listen very carefully. Minister in the Ministry of Finance, you listen very carefully. Minister in the Office of the Attorney General, listen very carefully. Minister of Health, listen carefully. Because the Minister of Planning is always listening carefully. Because, ladies and gentlemen, he brooks no, anyway, he takes no prisoners. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, he does his job with laser-like focus. Welcome to the lectern, the Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Minister in the Office of the Attorney General, the Member of Parliament for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, the Honorable Stuart Young.
Political leader, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, members of the head table, deputy political leaders, my cabinet colleagues, PNM family, all other protocols observed. With an introduction like that, I better live up to the cause tonight. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, I'm here tonight to speak to you about the very careful, meticulous, and complete work that has been going on out of the Office of the Attorney General over the last 24 months. I am not here tonight to do the proverbial busing of a mark, entering into bacchanal, or small talk. I am here tonight to tell you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, the civic-minded persons in Trinidad and Tobago, and the opposition of Trinidad and Tobago, what is the work that has been going on for the last 24 months out of the Office of the Attorney General. Now, this work has been twofold, because the first thing we have to do is protect Trinidad and Tobago, and to protect the treasury of Trinidad and Tobago that was under attack for the last period of 2010 to 2015. And the second set of work we've been doing assiduously and meticulously, very carefully, and it has never been done before in Trinidad and Tobago by any government is the work we've been doing with white-collar crime and corruption. I'd just like to explain once again what the government is in control of. The government is not in control of the police service and is not in control of the Director of Public Prosecutions constitutionally. So we can't control criminal work and criminal charges in Trinidad and Tobago. But we didn't sit back and hold our hands up in the air. What we did is we went to the civil courts of Trinidad and Tobago, and also, as you will hear, the courts of England, the courts in the United States in both Miami and New York, to protect you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And just before I launch into the work that we've done and my reporting to you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, I put down a marker here tonight, my fellow citizens and my PNM family. Going forward from this point on, listen very carefully to who makes the most noise in and out of Parliament. The people who make the most noise and who oppose things like the Revenue Authority, oppose the Attorney General's follow the money, oppose the Attorney General's new legislation that's going to be coming to explain your wealth. Ask yourselves, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, why? Ask yourselves why there are opposition members in the Parliament who are protesting loudest and making the most noise when we come very quietly, very efficiently, and very effectively to protect you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I'd like to start with a company called SIS. You all remember SIS? People say PNM has done nothing. Well, let me tell you very quietly, because we don't go and boast about it. When we came in, there was something called the Betham wastewater plant that the then leader of the opposition, and thank God our now Prime Minister, raised in the Parliament when we were in opposition. You remember that? Within a few weeks of us coming into office, SIS decided they wanted to try and get out of that project. Well, let me tell you what we found. Over $1 billion of our tax-paying money, cash, paid to SIS for a worthless, useless Betham wastewater plant. What did we do? We immediately took him to arbitration. But further than that, do you all recall on the 23rd of December 2015, 2 days before Christmas, out of the Office of the Attorney General, we led a charge and we went and froze $180 million of SIS's assets? Right. That was step one. What you, the country, don't know is quietly, with a best-in-class international team of forensic auditors, investigators, and lawyers from both England and the United States, we went quietly and we investigated NGC and a company called PSAEL. And you know what we found? I'll read it. This is from one of the reports I have, and we're going to take action. 14 projects with a combined value of $274 million, each governed by a memorandum of agreement, were transferred from the NGC to PSAEL. Documentation received from PSAEL's finance unit suggests that PSAEL invoiced NGC for $217 million. Let me tell you the scheme. They were bleeding the dividends from NGC. Remember, we said $16 billion, but they were also taking out in expenses from NGC to build recreational facilities, allegedly all over the country. They thought we weren't doing anything about it. Trinidad and Tobago, I tell you tonight, we have done the work and we will be going after them. Now hear this one. NGC paid $219.3 million to PSAEL for this work. 8 projects, listen to this very carefully, 8 projects valued at approximately $173 million were awarded to 6 companies, all wholly owned by Super Holdings Limited, a company owned by Terence and Lincoln Lala, Krishna Lala's sons. Let me tell you the scheme that SIS had engaged in. They set up companies all over, not called SIS, gave the contracts to it. People, I stand here tonight to tell you this government will go after them for all of that money and all of those projects. That was their modus operandi. I will tell you in a short while about what they did at EFCL and 5 contractors that you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the God-fearing, tax-paying people of Trinidad and Tobago, have gone after at EMBD. So that's what we did with SIS. That work is continuing. There's a lot afoot. And whenever it goes, we will come and tell you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, what we've done to protect you and to fight white-collar crime. OAS, you remember OAS? OAS is a Brazilian firm that has been put into bankruptcy and judicial management in Brazil. They have locked up the executives of OAS and a whole set of people in Brazil. The former government decided to give OAS a contract to extend the highway to Point Fortin. You remember that? And when we were in opposition, we asked, why don't you take loans? Why don't you take low-interest loans to pay for the highway? What did they do? $5 billion of your tax-paying money, cash again, paid to OAS and others. What did they do on the 4th of September 2015, the Friday before the general election on the Monday? You know what they did? Under the directorship of the then Minister of Works and Transport, Rambachan, they went and compromised our right as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to terminate SIS. They entered into a contract called Contract Addendum number 2, and gave away the right to terminate them even though OAS bankrupt in Brazil. That is the easiest way to terminate a contractor when they bankrupt. And that government, led by Kamala Prasad Bisesa, under Suraj Rambachan as the Minister of Works and Transport, on the Friday before elections in September 2017, compromised our rights as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and put us into very expensive arbitration. But we will fight it. And out of the Office of the Attorney General, we're managing it and we're going to fight it. You know what we did? There were standby letters of credit issued by international banks. We called on it. I have to sit down in Parliament on a Friday and listen to them on the other side saying, we protected Trinidad and Tobago by having standby letters of credits and bonds. They did not. We had to go to the High Court in England, the Commercial Court. We fought them there. We fought them in the High Court of London, in the Court of Appeal in London, and we went all the way up to the Supreme Court of London to protect you, the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago. Fought them all the way and recovered $1 billion for Trinidad and Tobago. EFCL, Education Facilities Company Limited. You remember that we found people in a secret room at EFCL, back room, producing documents and tender documents? We've done the work there. It is very, very complex and very, very complicated. But let me tell you, we found, and I'm going to name the contractors in a short while, certain contractors in Trinidad and Tobago went again and set up a number of other companies when they looked as though it was competitive bidding and tendering. You know what we found? The same contractor had 4 companies owned by these same contractors out of 5 bidding. It is bid rigging. It was cartel behavior. It was corruption and collusion. This government is going after that as well. And very shortly, out of the Office of the Attorney General, we will report to you the action that we intend to commence in the High Court for some of that. I'm going to tell you about HDC now. HDC. 2 contractors at HDC under Rudal Munilal, the then housing minister. 2 contractors. One made $1 billion, paid, there's not contracts awarded, he paid them, one of them, $1 billion. Mutilal Ramhit and Sons. And then he paid TN Ramnath over $1 billion during that 5-year period, $1.3 billion. And you know what? They did not do the work they were supposed to have done. We are going after that as well. You remember someone called Jerlene John? You remember how close Jerlene was with Munilal? This is the action that we filed on your behalf for something called Eden Gardens. And we filed it over a year ago, very quietly. Went to court out of the Office of the Attorney General, filed the action, and we began to follow the money. For the first time in Trinidad and Tobago, using the civil courts, the government has been following the money. That deal was that they asked the HDC to pay $175 million for a piece of land that an independent valuator valued at under $60 million. Seems to be a lot of gravy, and it was followed, and we have been following the money. And you know what we found? A check for $50,000 paid to a public servant by the persons who were selling the land to HDC. A public servant working in the Commissioner of Valuations office, who is the person that valued the land at the 180 million so they could buy it at 175 when an independent valuator said no, it's worth 50 to 60 million dollars. This government, under that Prime Minister, that Attorney General, and the Office of the Attorney General, followed the money for you, Trinidad and Tobago, found that, and we filed an amended statement of claim in June of this year. I've served it, and we are going after them for your money. Now, you know who had to take that to cabinet to have it approved? Who was the Minister of Housing at the time that took that transaction that cost us, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, tens of millions of dollars to cabinet? Right. Who's been making a set of noise and calling press conference and talking about fake documents? Right. I assure you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago here tonight, without fear of contradiction, every single action that has been filed and is being pursued on your behalf is backed up by documentary evidence and forensic evidence, the likes that this country has never seen before. You remember live sport? Live sport was busted wide in Parliament by the then Minister of National Security, Gary Griffith, and the then Minister of Finance, Larry Hawaii, under Kamala Persad-Bissessar. You remember that? And the Express expose busting it wide open for us, the people in Trinidad and Tobago. What did Kamala do about it? Let me tell you what she did. They got the Central Audit Committee out of the Ministry of Finance to do an investigation. And we have found the document saying from that Central Audit Committee, do not go with the reporters yet. It is premature. We need more time. What did Kamala do? She forced Hawaii to bring the document to the public. This is all they did, half-baked, all the work not done, and it was then successfully challenged in court. You remember that? They tried to fool us, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to say they went after live sport. They did nothing. In fact, the only work that was being done, thankfully by the public servants out of the Central Audit Committee, Kamala Persad-Bissessar and Larry Hawaii, compromised that report and sabotaged that report. And we, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, had to lose that case in court. Fear not. You voted in a PNM government in September 2015. Immediately, very quietly, very efficiently, very meticulously, we set about to work. And we sat down with the thousands of documents. In April of this year, on the 3rd of April 2017, on your behalf and the future generations' behalf, we filed a claim against 13 defendants, the former directors of the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago. Very quietly, This claim is in court now, and we're pursuing them for what they did with live sport to recover the money for you. We didn't stop there. Remember they had a man who called a press conference in the Hyatt, and he said, what's $34 million? That's a jiggle in the piggy bank. A jiggle in the piggy bank is how he insulted us, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Well, let me tell you all something. He go jiggle on this. On the 2nd of June 2017, on your behalf, we are pursuing eBeam Interact Limited, a company that was incorporated by the former sports minister Anil Roberts' family, and we're finding the links through forensic work. We're going after the jiggle in the piggy bank for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I can tell you here today, without fear of contradiction, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is also going after the jiggle in the piggy bank and the other areas of live sport. But we have no control over that, nor do we interfere with it. But we, as the government, on your behalf, have done the work, found the documents, we've done the forensic work, we're following the money, and we're pursuing them in the civil courts of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, you remember a few weeks ago, I told you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the work done out of the Office of the Attorney General in a company called EMBD, Estate Management and Business Company Limited. Who was the minister at the time in charge of this when hundreds of millions of dollars were spent? You know what we've gone after? You know what he spent $400 million on? And he managed a few weeks before the general election to get over $200 million paid off for 10 contracts. There were traces. Caroni lands, there were traces. $400 million in 10 contracts distributed beforehand, decided in cartel behavior, corruption and bid rigging amongst 5 contractors. Remember I told you about HDC and a few of them, EFCL and a few of them? TN Ramnath, Mutilal Ramhit, Fides, Calco, and Namalco. Those are the 5 contractors who in these 10 contracts distributed it amongst themselves, decided how they were going to spend $400 million. And you know what? The minister then took a note to cabinet and they said FCB would give them a short-term loan for $400 million to pay contractors that at that time were owed close to $1 billion. They didn't pay any of that to the contractors who were owed money. They instead gave it to these 5 contractors. And I stand here without fear of contradiction tonight to tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago, we are going after that. And we are not going to allow it. 3 of those contractors, 4 of them actually, sued the EMBD. Because understand, in the last 24 months, very quietly, we have been working with an international team of forensic auditors and investigators and attorneys. We had to build a case. So PNM family, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, your patience with your government is going to pay dividends. When everybody said, what PNM doing? All you're doing nothing about corruption. You're fighting corruption. It was very, very difficult to stay quiet. But we stayed quiet and we took body blows for it. But I can stand here tonight in front of you, Trinidad and Tobago, and our international partners who are looking on. Because the rest of the world is looking at Trinidad and Tobago and this government, I'll tell you that, and how we're dealing with corruption. And we are getting commendations all over the world. So let us be patriotic here in Trinidad and Tobago. Stand with your government. Support your government because your government is working for you in the fight against corruption. Not only for you, but for the future generations of Trinidad and Tobago. 4 of these contractors sued EMBD. One of them had the gall to sue EMBD for $1.3 billion. And now putting out full-page ads in the newspaper, every newspaper, back and front and all kind of how. But let me tell you the truth. We fought that case hard to make sure that they did not get the payments that they're seeking, hundreds of millions of dollars in interim payments, because we knew the work that was going on in the back room. We knew they following the money. We knew what we had found. And people of Trinidad and Tobago, the work that was done there is incredible work, and we are proud to be associated with it. Let me tell you one example. We went through every single tender document and compared every price, everything that they did. You know how they bid rigged? Them 5 contractors, paint. Paint is paint is paint. It's the same paint if you're painting so or you're painting so. Let me tell you, the cost of the paint is $35 to $40 a meter. That's the proper cost of paint. If you and I go to paint, the contractor who won contract 1 put it for $35 to $40 a meter. And all of the other 4 put it at $400 and $500 and $600 a meter. How they explaining that? And you know what? I then lined it up with the bid that they won. And the bid that they won, they use the same $35 to $40 a meter. But in the other bids, in an unexplainable manner, where they lost is $400, $500, and $600, $800 a meter. Let them go in the courthouse and explain that. Now, you would have heard the same Rudal Munilal talk about how the Attorney General and I sit down and we type up text messages. Let me tell you all something. It was no interception. It is forensic work that was done on the phone owned by you, the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago, because the then CEO had a company-issued phone, which when we suspended him, we took and we forensically examined, and we found the text messages and the SMS messages and the other messages between him, Munilal, and the contractors. So the document you see Munilal holding up and waving, schedule number 8 to the claim, yes, it is a typed up document because it is not the evidence in the claim. It is explaining to the court and explaining to everyone, this is what is found. But I guarantee you, every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, that we have done forensic work and we have the evidence to support the claim. And we have found the linkages. We have found where comments were made, bring this check for me, pay this contractor 10 million, bring the check to me, I will give it to them, etc. And I've seen it outside of Parliament. Outside of Parliament. I do not need to hide in Parliament behind parliamentary privilege to tell the truth and to talk about the type of work that the Office of the Attorney General has done on behalf of every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. So we're fighting Namalco, we fighting Ramhit, we fighting Calco, we fighting Fides, and we fighting TN Ramnath. And we have filed the claims against all of them. And I heard him on last week telling us in Parliament, he ain't get served yet. He ain't get served yet. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, I stand here tonight in front of all of you and give you the assurance he shall be served soon. And he can go in the courthouse and make all the noise he wants, because I guarantee you this is the best work that has ever been done by our government in a court. If you see the traces they built, another thing we have proved, because we've gone along the roadways and we've tested it. So where they're supposed to give us this amount of pitch, because remember it's traces, $400 million in traces in Carney lands. They're supposed to give us this amount of pitch. We got that amount. You know what the contractors also did? They set up other companies as labs, because the contract said you had to test the pitch and it had to pass the lab test. And I'm telling you all here tonight, 2 or 3 of those contractors used their own companies to do the lab test, and of course it failed. I'm saying it outside of Parliament, because it is the truth what I tell you here tonight. This type of forensic analysis and work has never been done before by our government, And this government is going to pursue white-collar crime, and we're going to try to stamp hard on corruption. But we need your support. So when they attack and when they come at us, I'm looking forward to your support, because you have my commitment and you have the government's commitment. There's some other work that we've done very quietly, very efficiently, and I am guaranteeing you very effectively. CLF. Since 2009, we the taxpayers went into CLF to bail out a private company. Since 2009. When this government came in, UNC had it for 5 years and 3 months and did nothing. The Minister of Planning talked about that former governor of Central Bank that thank God we got rid of. He was there for a period of that time and did nothing, but has the audacity to stand up yesterday in Parliament and criticize this government for the effective work that we did on your behalf. The shareholders did not sign an agreement. We had over 17 to 19 billion dollars of taxpayers' monies exposed. They refused to give security over this money. This is a private company that we, the taxpayers, bailed out. We had not a single piece of paper protecting you. So what did we do? We went to court and we fought hard and we got liquidators appointed. And have no fear, the liquidators we found are the best in class in the world. These are the same liquidators doing the Stanford litigation and liquidation. It's not no fly-by-night. We appoint no friends like they would have done. And we fought them hard and we got attacked over and over for that. But I stand here tonight and assure you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, this government will recover every red cent that it can out of those billions for you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And we were criticized for doing it. And they brought race into play and all sorts of things into play. But as usual, we stood strong, we stood firm, and we stood assured because we're doing things for the right reason. We're doing things for Trinidad and Tobago, and that's what a patriot is about. And listen to those unpatriotic ones who are on the verge of treason on the other side as they attack what your government is doing. But stand assured, we are doing what is right for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And the CLF liquidation will continue, and it will be done properly. And they keep calling about the Buko land for the Sandals project. We assure you it was done by international valuators, and that is the report. 2 sets of valuation reports by international valuators, local valuators who valued the land at that amount, and we followed every letter of the law in doing it properly, not like them. I heard him yesterday talk about MHTL and we lost MHTL. That was under him and his government. It is them who lost MHTL by taking it to arbitration instead of sitting down and working it out with the other shareholders. The UNC government cost this country the shares it had in MHTL. So do not listen to their lies and misinformation. Very quickly, recently you would have seen some shake-up going on at the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. You've heard your Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister to go before a joint select committee of Parliament and subject himself to his peers in a Parliament without fear of any questions being asked. We went there with documentation. We went there with documentation. We have examined it forensically. Again, I heard them say, how could the Office of the Attorney General go in and examine? Listen, at the end of the day, all computers, phones, electronic items, servers, etc., owned by every state enterprise in Trinidad and Tobago, fall under the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And your government must protect you, the taxpayers. You don't need permission to take an employee's phone if an employee is engaging in corrupt behavior and do anything with it. At the Port Authority, we found evidence that the original owners of the Cabo Star had reached out to the management of the port before Bridgman became the owner. They wrote to the Port Authority management, and we have that in writing. It's been forensically examined, and we have it. on the 25th of May, saying that they were prepared to offer the Carbo Star at a price much lower than what we got stick with now. Isn't it the responsibility of the management to take that to the board and say, look, the original owner is offering a boat at this level? If they had done that, you know how much we would have saved annually for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago? $15 million. But you know what happened? The board wasn't told anything. The next thing we know, Bridgman on the scene, Bridgman has bought the boat, charging the government a price, they're rushing, they're pushing, they're pressuring us, the management of the port, and what happens? We, the citizens, get burdened with $15 million extra for the Carbo Star. But let me tell you all something. People is make noise, say they're going to court, they're going to sue, they're going to challenge, etc. Go ahead. Because I stand here today telling you, without fear of contradiction, the forensic evidence that we have of what went on there is beyond repute. So who gets suspended and who gets fired? Go to court. Go to court and let me bring that forensic evidence for the population of Trinidad and Tobago to show you the work that this government has done to protect you. The last one I want to talk to you all about tonight, just before I'm told to wrap up, is the same Point 14 highway extension. You all would have heard very recently some talk about the millions of dollars paid for land on the Point 14 extension. The Office of the Attorney General has begun an investigation into that. What we have found is mind-boggling. I'll just give you a little taste. One person for 5 acres of land. Now remember, all of the money paid by the state is our money. It is the civic-minded citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, it's the taxpayers, it's those who abide by the law, live by the law, and we will take the pressure. 5 acres of land. They say the land is $23.2 million. They then come up with a concept. This is all under the Kamla Prasad Bisesa government. They come up with a concept called disturbance, injurious, affection, etc. $49.8 million. So they say the land is 23.2. They're giving you, for disturbance and injurious affection, etc., 49.8. And then they're giving you interest too. So we end up paying $75 million for 5 acres of worthless land. You heard the Minister of Works and Transport say yesterday, we've given the instructions, not a red cent will be paid to them. Take us to court, we will fight you in court. Another, you'll allow me to use this word, another imps with 4 acres of land, worthless, useless land that he was using to store lumber on for burning at Hindu and Muslim funerals, Hindu funerals, right? 4 acres of land, they value it at $25 million. For disturbance, they give him $6.6 million, give him interest at $10 million, $42 million for a piece of land that was being used to store timber. You know what we found out? And I don't want to say too much because I intend to go to court on this one. The person who was privately valuing the land for the person end up it was part of the public service, also valuing it for the government and for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That land did not have the right town and country accreditation. All of a sudden, when check had a cut, something went on in town and country, and they get a change of use. Well, people of Trinidad and Tobago, there are about 6 to 7 of them that we're currently investigating, and what we're finding is disgusting. But I think I've delivered my message to you tonight. And my message to you is rest assured, this government is working. It's working hard. It's working efficiently. I don't need to stand up and shout anywhere. I don't need to point fingers. And anything I have to say to protect you, the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago, I will say outside of Parliament without fear of contradiction. Citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, you have elected a government. Stand behind this government, because the first time this type of work is being done by best in class from around the world. And we will pursue all of these red cents on your behalf, quietly, efficiently, meticulously, and in accordance with the law. And before I forget, let the contractors know I've also gone to the courts in New York and Miami, and I'm working there as well, out of the Office of the Attorney General. Allow me to end with no truer words than, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.
You see what I told you, ladies and gentlemen? He is a thorn in the side of the opposition. Deputy political leaders Joan Yule Williams and Rohan Sinanan, I hope you all were listening. That is what your PNM has been doing. Hedgeridge Barrow, former MP for Labray, I know you were listening. That is what your government has been doing. Faris Alwari, Edmund Dillon, Stuart Young, all working on behalf of you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, to ensure that every red cent, every black cent, every crime, I don't know why they're trying to tell me what to say. Every crime, white, blue, and yellow, will be attacked with full force. But ladies and gentlemen, we know that politics is not a bishop's tea party. But it really boggles my mind that these people who are in the opposition day after day could sit and think of ways to deceive you. You, the right-thinking people of Trinidad and Tobago. It's almost as though they believe we all have collective amnesia, that we've all forgotten the 63 months of terror, of profligacy, of bad spending, of corruption, of nepotism, of cronyism, of thieving, and more thieving that we experience as a country under the stewardship of Kamla Persad Bissessar. And ladies and gentlemen, you heard quite clearly what Stuart Young had to say. And I have said it before, we have all said it before. Kamla Persad Bissessar and her band of merry men all think the entire population of Trinidad and Tobago has very short memories, or they think we're stupid. But I just want to tell you how they raped the treasury from one state enterprise, EMBD. And unlike Stuart Young, I am not calling the names of companies. Stuart Young still have court clothes. I had court clothes, but I don't have any more. I only have political clothes. So ladies and gentlemen, I will call them company A, B, C, D, and E. Okay, company A. When all of us were outside, walking the ground during the election period, when we were thinking that they were walking the ground during the election period, this is what they were doing. On the 17th of August, Company A, 2015, Company A was issued a check in the amount of $1,202,525. Again, on the 17th of August, Company A, $378,859.81. They asked for the cents and all. Company A again on the 17th of August. You see the dates? All on the 17th of August. $2,482,273.69. Company A again on the 17th of August. $936,341.50. It didn't stop there. On the 25th of August, Company A, $10 million. On the 2nd of September, election nearly time for us to vote. Company A, $655,850.29. Company A again on the 4th of September, $4 million. Ladies and gentlemen, during that period, Company A was paid $175,576.60. And you know they took the 60 cents too. Company B, on the 20th of August 2015, they were paid a check for $50 million. $50 million. The next day, the 21st of August, they received a check for $30 million. On the 25th of August, Company B received another check for $4,155,288.75. On the 25th of August, Company B received two checks, one for $3,469,866.40 and another check for $12,374,844.85. On the 4th of September, Company B, $20 million. Again, on the 4th of September, Company B, $5 million. In total, ladies and gentlemen, Company B received $125 million. In a 3-week period, Company C, on the 21st of August, a check for $20 million. On the 25th of August, a check for $8,621,599.25. On the 4th of September, $1,683,073.90. Again, on the 4th of September, $13,316,926. Company C, ladies and gentlemen, received in total $43,621,599.20. I repeat, 3 weeks before the election. Company D. On the 4th of September, they received a check for $4 million. That's Company D. Company E. On the 21st of August, they received a check for $30 million. On the 25th of August, they received a check for $25 million. On the 2nd of September, they received a check for $5 million. On the 4th of September, Company E received 2 checks, one for $20 million. In fact, it was $20,708,581.68. The second check, $5,291,418.32. Ladies and gentlemen, Company E received in total $85,999,999.90. Companies A, B, C, D, and E. There are other companies on this list, ladies and gentlemen. The total that these companies, 56 checks were issued, received was 418,000. Ladies and gentlemen, I just accustomed to counting in thousands. It was $418,383,479.50. 3 weeks before the election, when your political leader, now Prime Minister, when your members of parliament were trudging the ground asking people to vote for them, this is what Kamala and her merry band were doing with your taxpayers' money. $418,383,479.50. And ladies and gentlemen, that is probably why they needed that extra 3-month period. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to repeat Company E, who got $85,999,999.90. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to join with Stuart Young and say, you see the 999? That's what we call in for them. 999. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want to say to Stuart Young and to my Prime Minister that Munilal has been saying that I'm a WPC. I'm glad to be a WPC. I hope I get the warrant to serve him in my capacity as a WPC. Anyway, let me don't say that. Ladies and gentlemen, all of this unprecedented work by the Office of the Attorney General under the leadership of the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. And ladies and gentlemen, that is why they are trying to do everything in their power to distract you from the work that is being done under Dr. Rowley. But we will not be distracted. We know what is the strength of our political leader. Those who voted for him know what is the strength of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. We will not be distracted. He will not be distracted, ladies and gentlemen. And let me say from this lectern that he is a political leader and a Prime Minister in which we are all proud. Ladies and gentlemen, without his guidance, none of this would be taking place. Without his guidance and his vision, because you must remember that Vision 2020, which they discarded, started under Keith Christopher Rowley when he was the Minister of Planning and Development. We are now on to Vision 2030 under the guidance of Keith Rowley as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And ladies and gentlemen, I repeat This is a prime minister in whom we are all proud. This is a prime minister who stands up for truth, who stands for what is right, and who will not be distracted from the vision that he has for Trinidad and Tobago and from the vision to ensure that corruption is a thing of the past. And that is why they always try to bring him down. But he will not be brought down because we are here to lift him up. And ladies and gentlemen, I ask you tonight to join with me in welcoming to the lectern our political leader, the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley.
And I can't believe it, no. See, I'm far from finished. Love the life that I live in.
Thank you very much, Chairman of tonight's proceedings, Member of Parliament for Ruka Maloney, Lady Vice Chairman of the PNM, and Minister of Planning and Development of Trinidad and Tobago. Deputy political leaders of the PNM, Mrs. Joan Yule Williams and Senator Rohan Sinonan, other party officers, my cabinet colleagues, my parliamentary colleagues, mayors and chairmen, people of San Fernando. As I was sitting there tonight, I remembered yesterday, was it yesterday? Supi got an honorary degree from UWI. And I want to congratulate Lord Superior, popularly known as Supi, for being a Calypsonian of highest quality and being recognized by my alma mater, the University of the West Indies. And as I sat there tonight, I could only reflect on Supi in all his glory. Saying, going down San Fernando, down there have plenty tempo. That is tempo in San Fernando. Welcome to a PNM meeting, and thank you all for coming out in your numbers, and thank you all for listening to the business of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. There's so much that can be said, and there's so much that can be sad about. But we still try to keep our heads up, try to be focused, and try to be happy. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just finished presenting the third budget of this administration, passed in the Senate last night, and presented by a Minister of Finance who has done a very good job in a very difficult situation. He's an engineer, and I heard last night a certain miscreant saying that we have a Minister of Finance who's playing economist. I didn't know that the post of Minister of Finance was reserved for economists. As a matter of fact, most economists will tell you that all things being equal, it will be so and so and so, but you know all things are never equal. To start with that. We've had ministers of finance in this country. Dr. Eric Williams was a historian. He was Minister of Finance in this country. George Chambers was a man of few letters, but they will tell you he was probably the best Minister of Finance this country ever had. Patrick Manning was a geologist. And it might be that the people you want furthest from the Ministry of Finance are economists. But I'd leave Jawala alone because he doesn't even know where to go. Because if he had any common sense, he would never have gone to the parliament last night and talked that foolishness. Because what he has proven is the correctness of the action of the government for removing him from the central bank. Because you could imagine if he was in the central bank as our central bank governor with that poison and that bile, And we are trying to handle this difficult situation with a governor of the central bank who gleefully run to the Minister of Finance when we were in office for a few days and announced to him with a big broad smile that there is only money left to run the country for 3 days. That is the news he carried to the Minister of Finance. And has the gall, after he was dismissed from the job for all kinds of good reason, come inside the parliament to tell us that we are frightening the country about the IMF and we have lowered the bar so low that we can step over and claim credit when credit is to be had if we go above that low level. Anybody looking on will say it's a good thing the government had the strength of character and the belief in what is right to remove that miscreant from the central bank. You have heard the shocking news there tonight from the Minister of Planning and Development of how a company called Estate Management Development Company, one of the least of our state enterprises, have no revenue, relying entirely on government subvention to conduct its business. But in 21 days before a general election, like Saul's student, they allowed $418 million to flow through that company from mid-August to the election day. You know where that money came from? It didn't come from the central bank current account. That was already used up. It didn't come from NGC's 16 billion. That was already used up. It didn't come from the overdraft. That was already, they borrowed that money from FCB. They borrowed that money to thief it. It was a loan from FCB that they took during that election season and then spent it in that way. And then we have to have the patience of Job and the upbringing of our parents to sit in the parliament and behave as normal parliamentarians while they ask us why we're borrowing money. And we must account to them for every cent we spend. And they want to know how much money we're spending on this. We have just come out of the examination of the budget. I think it was 5 days, line by line. They sat there and kept asking us, why are you cutting this? Where's the money for that? And the simple answer is, you thief it. And you want more money for this and more money for that? Yes, we can have more money for this and more money for that. But we ask them, where should we take it from? A to put by B or W to put by X? They can't tell you. Spent 5 days in the parliament. Had nothing to contribute. The opposition leader came and read something that somebody wrote for her and disappeared. Never came back. Could you imagine the national budget in this parliament is being voted upon? And when it was time for the vote, there were only 8 opposition members. And to get 8 of them, the chair had to call back one because he was leaving before the vote. So there had been 7 of them voting. That should give you an idea as to how they see the country's business. Imagine under law, once the Minister of Finance reads the budget, you now fall under the regulations of Parliament under law as to what should happen for the following days. You have to give 3 days before you can begin to continue the debate for the opposition to respond. And then once that happens, a certain number of days that the debate must take place and must end at a particular time. When that is finished, a certain number of days to examine the budget spelled out in law. During that period, there was a flood in the south and east of Trinidad. You know what I'm being told as Prime Minister? I, who leading the government in the budget under law to be in the parliament to pass the budget, I should have left the parliament and go in a boat and walk around the floodwater to show that I'm the Prime Minister and that I love the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I am required to be in the parliament under law to pass the budget, you know. And interestingly enough, as we are suffering across the country in the floods and require money to be spent on these people to get them back on their feet, they say postpone the budget as if you could do so under law. Couldn't be done. But if you need help, the first set of money has to come from the budget. If we don't pass the budget, there's no money to be spent. And that is the kind of common sense that they think we don't have in this country. That we don't know that if you go and borrow money and spend it in the way that Moonlal spent it as minister and his friends as contractors, that we wouldn't know what to do. But let me tell you what you got away from. You got away from that. Because all those numbers you were hearing there, the billions that the government was sued for through the MBD, and the billions here, had we not won the election in 2015, you would have paid all that money because all of it was already certified to be paid. What we are doing now is fighting it not to pay it, to justify to the court why it shouldn't be paid, that it involves fraud and corruption and mismanagement. All that, we are in the court fighting that, and you have elected a government to do just that, and that is what we are doing. They didn't only borrow the money and put it in EMBD to thief it, you know. It was a modus operandi. The EMBD, they borrowed 400 million, and it's a short-term loan to be repaid in a matter of a few months. The interest was 16 million, so the exposure to the bank was 416 million. Moonilal was so efficient in shoveling money out of the country, he and his friends, they used up all 400 million, as you heard just here. From the middle of August to the election week, they managed to get the 400 million used up. In the sport company, where they did the same thing, those people in there didn't have a Moonilal, so they didn't manage to get it out. So when the government changed, we met it there. So thankfully, we are now spending that money in this period, otherwise they'll go on the same way. Another batch was borrowed and put in the EFCL. Their minister was only half as efficient. He only took out half. And that's what happened. Borrowed money. Over $1 billion was borrowed for that purpose. And we are challenging it as we are able to, as we can protect your interests. And you do have in office people who have the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago at heart. The budget that we've just passed anticipates an expenditure of $50 billion. Even so, ladies and gentlemen, the revenue to support that is not all there. We are only expecting from the revenues that we are accustomed to, that we can look for as core revenue, probably $43 billion or thereabouts, 42 billion, 41 billion, but we are aiming to be able to spend 50 billion. So we have to close that gap by borrowing or by using up some of our assets somewhere. That is the budget. A budget is an expectation of revenues and an expectation, it's an estimate. That means even if we achieve that, of being able to service the country with $50 billion, this government, these ministers, these administrators today in 2017, going into 2018, where the budget kicks in on 1st of October, we would be having available to us $13 billion less than that last rampaging government, that kleptocracy of Kamala Persad-Bissessar and her friends. They would have had $13 billion more than we have. So when you hear them comparing that, I would have give you this, and I would give you that, and I would have give you that, that is how they ran the country. And that was what is available to them. And including all the debt that they incur and spend out. Now I just told you, they borrowed $400 million on a short-term loan. What do you think happened after the election? This government has to find ways of dealing with that. So they borrowed it, they spent it, but we are the ones required to service it. So the Minister of Finance, over and above dealing with today's circumstance, has to go to the bank and convert those short-term loans into long-term loans because we can't pay it back in the way they borrowed it. It was supposed to have been paid back in 6 months. The money just is not there, so you pay the interest and you put the loan down the road, expecting that sometime in the future your circumstance will be better, and then you discharge it down the road. That's what we're doing. And that is the kind of work that the Minister of Finance and his team in the Ministry of Finance have to do on a daily basis. So when you hear them talking about Imbert incompetent and this government incompetent, they will know our competence. They will know our competence in the court of law in Trinidad and Tobago when they get there on a personal level. When they get there at the personal level to explain themselves, they will know who competent and who incompetent. I tell you tonight, I told you before, you must have heard me say this before. One of the first requirements of a leader is to choose the right people for the jobs that have to be discharged. And I can tell you, in Faris Al-Rawi as Attorney General, in Stuart Young as Minister in the Office of the Attorney General, in Fitzgerald Hines in the Ministry of the Attorney General, in Edmund Dillon in the Office of National Security, and across this cabinet, as far as you are able to, I have chosen the best people available to me to do these jobs. And they know it, and they know it. So their song, their mantra is that the government is incompetent. And sometimes they even go further to discuss corruption, you know. Could you imagine that Kamla Prasad Bisesa, who oversaw all of what you heard here tonight, has the gall to go on a public platform and say that this PNM government is the most corrupt government in the history of the country? Well, I didn't respond to that. Basdio Pandey responded to that. He said that that UNC that she has there is the most corrupt government in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. And that is no idle statement or no sour grapes on Pandey's behalf. That is supported by the evidence that we have referred to here tonight. The evidence. And I'll tell you something else too. I stand there before you tonight, having come from the opposition. I spent 3 terms in the opposition, 2 under Patrick Manning and 1 leading on my own. When I was in the opposition, I led my team, including Fitzgerald Hines, Terence Dale Singh, Franklin Khan, others, and of course we brought in new ones in the election. We voted and supported 89% of the legislation brought by the UNC for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. In many instances, in committee stage, we took the lead. And go on the Hansard, you will see them congratulating Imbert and Marlene MacDonald for taking the lead in committee to get legislation through. You know why? Because we are about the people of Trinidad and Tobago and not about ourselves. Let me tell you what their position is, so that you can see how lonely our position is in the government. They called us one day and tell us, come and collect all the Vision 2020 documents and CDs. Come right now, or are you dumping it in the labas? We collected some of it and kept it in Balizi House because they dumped the rest in the labas, Vision 2020. This was not a PNM thing, it was a national thing, national plan. Both URI was part of it. A lot of independent people, professionals took part in that assignment. They dumped it. We have since reconstructed it, but of course we wasted time. We are now looking at Vision 2030. Even in our difficult situation, now more than ever, we have to have a plan and a roadmap. You know, we took it to the Parliament for treatment by the Joint Select Committee of Parliament. The Parliament can't deal with it. You know why? Because the leader of the UNC has refused to put members on the Joint Select Committee. So you kill it right there. By not appointing members, the Parliament cannot treat with the National Development Plan. You tell me if that is patriotism. You tell me if those are people who really want a plan for this country. And of course, you saw when we were facing all kinds of backlash in FACTA. You saw we had to fight them to get FACTA passed in the Parliament. And we told you why. Because they knew they were taking it personal, that if we go this route and there's reciprocity in sharing information as demanded by FACTA, their foreign accounts may be exposed to you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So they took the parliament to block it. Now we're not finished, you know. We are now in the Global Forum arrangement. FACTA was simply the United States. The Global Forum is a similar arrangement to deal with the other banks in the world and the other banks of other countries, mainly the European banks. You expect them to do differently or the same? What do you expect? Do you expect the opposition to support us in the Global Forum movement? No, because they are not supporting anything. Because their way back to government is to grind the country to a halt, create mayhem in the country, cheer when there are murders, cheer when things go wrong, tell the world that we are a nest of ISIS and we're creating Muslim extremists and jihadis, and that is the carrying on. That statement you hear coming out of London every Monday morning about caution about coming to Trinidad and Tobago, advisories against Trinidad and Tobago, you know what it's based on? It's based on statements from members of parliament in Trinidad and Tobago's parliament saying that we are, in fact, breeding jihadis in Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah? Between Munilal and the wheelman from Naparima, Rodney Charles. Because when a member of parliament gets up in your parliament and says something, he or she is not talking to you here, you know, you're talking to the world. And that's what you're facing. And of course, we, by expert investigation, know, not just anecdotal, we know that there's a huge amount of government taxes which are not collected in Trinidad and Tobago. And the best advice that we have as to how to proceed to improve that situation, where we need every penny to do the things we have to do in this country because our revenue has contracted. They want no part of the Revenue Authority. And you know what? Between the opposition and the leader of the Public Service Association, Watson Duke, they are telling you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that they will decide whether this country has a revenue authority or not. Well, let me tell them something tonight. Nobody elected the opposition and the PSA to say what is going to go on with respect to the revenue authority in this period. That is a matter for the government. And let me say something to public servants. I saw Watson Duke telling public servants, don't cooperate with the government, don't do this, don't do that. Let me say something to public servants. The government of Trinidad and Tobago is your employer. And Watson Duke only represents your interests as you are employed. We have gone out of our way to ensure that the vast majority of people on the government payroll have seen the care and attention of the government. And if the government decides to improve the taxation collection in this country, I'm simply warning public servants and asking public servants, let good sense prevail and cooperate with your employer. We, in this country as the government, it falls to the government to determine the level and the location of taxation. Taxation is never a popular subject for a government to engage in because nobody likes to pay taxes. I have properties. I have to insure them. I have very good friends in the insurance industry. But if you know how I hate to write that insurance check, because I know I must do it. I need the protection. But in the back of my mind, I kind of figure out that I'm just making some other people wear nice ties and nice suits, and I'm just paying this money. And I don't like to write insurance company checks. And the same thing with taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but we have to pay taxes to raise the revenue to do the things that we are required to do for the wider national good. Whether it is the police, the fire service, the health center, the medicine, the teachers, they have to be paid for. Right? You get some of the money from the oil company by taxes and by ownership, but the taxes that you pay is what services the country. In some instances, you need opposition support. What has happened in Trinidad and Tobago has happened in no country in the world. No country I know in the world has had a system of property tax and has thrown it out willy-nilly just so, and has effectively taken the position that there will be no taxes on property in this country. At a time when we need every cent we can collect. This is a tax that we had settled on for decades. I kept telling you all, I have been paying that tax since I was 17 years old. And I grew up knowing that if my land is to be serviced or my house is to be serviced and I'm to contribute to it, every year I make my small contribution to the National Treasury. Kamla Prasad Bisesa and the UNC have now declared in Trinidad and Tobago that they will move heaven and earth to take out money like how you take it out in EMBD, but to make sure that on the revenue side, there is no tax on property. Now that might sound good to many of you who are house owners and so on, that you don't have to pay what you normally pay. But let me ask you a question. What about the real taxpayers in this country who can afford to pay and who are now being given a benefit of hundreds of millions of dollars on their businesses because they have not paid that tax for 6 or 7 or 8 years? And every year, by not having property tax in this country, the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. People with malls, people with huge properties that require the fire service to be at their disposal, and the policemen out at night to secure their property, and the roads paved, and the mosquitoes killed, they are not paying 1 cent in this country because the irresponsible opposition, the irresponsible thieving opposition, the irresponsible spending opposition have decided that they will not cooperate with the government to collect a tax that is normal across the world. We are the only people in the world that find property tax oppressive. What you have to do is determine what level the tax is at. And even if we say we're going to put it back at the same level that they skylarked with, the same level that they left it at, because when they left office, they said the amnesty is over. They ended the amnesty and put the law back in force. And let me tell you what you're facing. Let me tell you what you are facing and what they're going on with. They are hoping to drag this thing on and get down to the edge of the election, and then get back into the same mode you were in 2010, to tell the gullible population, don't vote for the PNM because they're going to tax your property. Vote for us and there will be none. So in other words, they are hoping that the next election will be run on property tax. I don't tell you people of Trinidad and Tobago, if you want them back, whenever you want them back, you can have them. Whenever you want them back, you can have them. But I have a confidence that the vast majority of the people of Trinidad and Tobago want to have absolutely nothing to do with Kamla Prasad Bisesa and their gang of people. None whatsoever. Yesterday, something happened in the parliament, and I'm calling on the Commissioner of Police to take careful note of what happened in the parliament. The Minister of Finance, under law, made an assessment of the gambling industry in this country and decided what taxes he will offer to the parliament. It is the parliament that will vote to determine whether the Minister of Finance will be allowed to tax anybody or anything at a certain level. So in the budget, the Minister of Finance laid out some taxes for the gaming industry. Immediately, a member of the opposition, who is a high-priced and high-paid consultant to the gaming industry, start to mobilize the workers of the casinos to make as much mayhem in the country as possible. Here it is the workers complaining about a tax to be levied again on the bosses, the owners, those who own the casinos. The tax is on their revenue. But they organize the workers to create mayhem in the country, telling you that they will lose their jobs if the tax is levied on their boss. So the bosses, many of them foreign, many of them questionable, nowhere in sight. But the workers out there telling you, them vote for the PNM, and therefore you can't tax my boss. And when that vote was going on, they end up home by Imbert's house. Home by his house. And rather than be condemned for that infraction, they are encouraged to do it. And of course, they go one better. They come inside the parliament. And again, this does not happen in any Commonwealth Parliament anywhere in the world. You are allowed to come in a public gallery. You are allowed to observe the proceedings. You could take whatever position you want, but you must remain silent. Even elected members of the House, as you are in your seat, there are rules. Last week, it was, who was it? Some member was out of his seat, came close to where I was and was talking, and then something happened, and he was required to reply to the chair. And the chair said to him, I will recognize you only if you are in your seat. Minister of Health, you have to be in your seat, the seat that says St. Joseph, to be recognized, because when you're in that seat, you are there representing the people of St. Joseph, not yourself. And we have to follow certain regulations inside there. And the public have to follow regulations. And the public are required to stay quiet and observe parliamentary proceedings. You know what happened last night? They brought Rabbi Rogers into the parliament. Brought into the parliament people who are taking a position that it is what they say must go, not what the parliament says, you know. And they have a running commentary going to the speaker, the leader of the government who's speaking. And when they didn't like what she is saying, they then created mob rule inside the parliament. Mob rule in the parliament, because the bosses will lose money and they would lose their jobs. Let me read something here for you all. Let me read something off my phone here for you. And this offshore, this is the New York Post, one of the main newspapers in New York, right? Offshore casino operator wants to team with Trump. This is an article written by Richard Wilner on September 29th, 2004. And I'm going to read it almost in its totality. Casino Fortune, an obscure Trinidad-based online casino, said it has a perfect apprentice in mind to help turn around the struggling Trump hotels and casino resorts, the Donald himself. The privately held web casino, which boasts 2 million customers, has made an unsolicited $400 million investment offer for Trump's 3 ailing Atlantic City casinos. A sum, it says, represents 31% stake in the company. And John Wallace, the CEO of Sunny Group, which owns Casino Fortune, said if the offer was accepted, the company would not be idle investors, but active managers, and teach Donald Trump about running a profitable casino business. And they're quoting Mr. Wallace here. We feel we can help Trump turn around his money-losing casinos and want to be involved in the management, he said. And then, like hurling a fastball under a batter's chin, he noted that unlike Trump's 3 Jersey Shore casinos, which haven't turned a profit since they went public in 1996, his casinos were profitable. Very profitable, he said dryly. One of the most profitable casinos in the world. If nothing else, Wallace is not hurting for chutzpah. He went on to quote, I want to sit down with his decision makers. We have the financing, we have the money, and are willing to get on a plane at a moment's notice. Wallace said his offer was, quote, very serious, unquote. Maybe, maybe not. It might be one offer that Trump can definitely refuse. As of yesterday afternoon, Trump had not even bothered to give Wallace a call. Maybe Trump knows the out-of-the-blue offer is not Casino Fortune's first attempt to grab headlines. In early April, the company wrote a letter to the NBA's Phoenix Suns seeking to buy the team for $380 million. Those are US dollars, eh? And 3 days later, sent a letter to NASA Administrator Sean O'Keefe seeking to buy a seat on an upcoming shuttle mission. It was a busy month. First, the offer by the Suns came with a promise to emblazon the team's jerseys with the casino's corporate logo. So a Trinidad and Tobago corporate logo could have ended up on the Phoenix Suns jersey. The NBA, however, bars any corporation name on its jerseys. Casino Fortune said its first move once it's owned the team would be to retire Charles Barkley's number 34 uniform. That has already been done. The Suns said talks between the team and the casino was never serious. The offer to purchase look, let me stop this. Let me just tell you what that means. The same owners of the casinos who sent out the workers to tell the Minister of Finance that if he taxed the casinos, he will have to send home the workers because they can't pay the tax. That is the casino owner who offered to buy and to help Donald Trump with Donald Trump casinos in Atlantic City. You all understand what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago? And let me just put an asterisk on this. Casino gambling is illegal in Trinidad and Tobago. What is legal is members' clubs. Under loopholes in members' clubs, these people have surreptitiously created in this country a huge casino industry generating those kinds of monies and largely unknown to the state and largely unknown to you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And they pose a risk to our financial system, they pose a risk to our security system, and this government, which I lead, will rectify that. The opposition to casino gambling in this country came largely from the churches and from the religious bodies on the grounds that gambling was a sin and so on and so on. We're not going there. We are going here by saying to have unregulated gambling in this country poses a danger to the country. As a matter of fact, if it continues for much longer, our banking system could find itself being de-risked and deregulated, because as we fight to prevent deregulation at the level of the CARICOM, one of the issues raised on Wednesday when I was in that meeting in Belize is the continued fight of us as CARICOM leaders to save ourselves from losing our banking system to being blacklisted and thrown out because of lack of appropriate regulations. Trinidad and Tobago, having probably the only unregulated casino industry in the world, is risking our very future. And all we are saying, we go to the parliament with a piece of legislation drafted by the UNC, left to languish, left to go and become almost functus. We brought it back to the parliament, not changing a comma, not changing a dot, and said to them, we need to do this now and urgently to ensure that we have casino gambling, but have it regulated under law. At a time when none of our banks will touch casino money. You know why? Because it's dangerous to their well-being. The very bill that they drafted, 1 year in the parliament, 1 year, would not agree to wrap it up and bring it to the parliament for a vote. It is now at the stage where we have concluded consultations. It's ready to come to the parliament. People of Trinidad and Tobago, watch very carefully and see what the UNC will do when we bring that bill to the parliament to vote to regulate casino gambling. See what they will say and see what they will do. And of course, everything that is for your benefit is no. Not a single matter is going through the parliament now or is raised in national debate where one can say the opposition will work with the government on it. The appointment of a commissioner of police is no. We use the number of seats we have in the parliament and on a simple majority to tweak the administration to try and get a commissioner appointed. They went to court and obstructed that in the courthouse. I'm hearing now that we are close to the appointment of a commissioner of police. I don't know how close, but this tardy process is going on and on and on. Wait and see what they will do in the parliament. They tell us we must diversify the economy. We must expand. One of the areas we have to expand into is tourism. It's one of the areas that give us the best option to grow our economy. There are Caribbean islands, whether it is Antigua, St. Lucia, Grenada, who are making their living off tourism. We have Tobago of a similar size and scale with even better arrangements for tourism, which we can now bring into the national economy. So we say, okay, we're going to get the best label available for Tobago, and we are encouraging sandals to come to Tobago. You know what they're doing? Moving heaven and earth to prevent that project from coming into being. Because they are not patriots. They have another agenda. One would have thought that if you see the government trying to bring that into this country and to allow it to become part of our expansion, you know what they're doing? Trying to make it look as if there's something underhand going on. They bring one of their imps there yesterday. The young man came into the parliament. His first day in the parliament, his first speech in the parliament, he leave quite where he come from to be attacking sandals in Tobago and demanding this and demanding that. What is sandals? Sandals would be a business investment where the business would be able to finance its loan trees operations. It will be owned by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And because the government doesn't want to carry the whole burden of financing it, the government has invited our local business sector to come into that project. That project already has a yes from the Lockjack Group. It has a yes from Neil and Massey. Garden Life and Massey has agreed to come in and take equity in the business. And of course, whatever you give to the business to support it, you're giving to yourself because it's your company. We are not anywhere near the stage of doing any give this or give that. It's a process we are going through. We have just signed a memorandum of understanding where the Sandals Group have agreed that if we build this hotel, that they will manage it and brand it for us, and that will do wonders for Tobago. The UNC want no part of that. Not just Tobago, but Trinidad and Tobago. They want no part of it. And trying to give you the impression that something underhand has gone on because the Prime Minister is the person who had talked to Butch Stewart. At least when I spoke to Butch Stewart as opposition leader, I had the respect of Butch Stewart to be taken seriously to consider Tobago. I can't say the same for them. And they believe that anytime the government talks to anybody and making a deal, not so in the PNM, we make deals with no one. We invite them to come and invest in our country, and we keep our nose and our hands clean because that's what you elected us for. And that is why, after 5 years in government, they could not convince this country or any court that there was any PNM person to face a RUCA. I give you the assurance that before this government is over, it will not be so with them. They want no part of anything good for this country, but unfortunately, there are instances when you need them to work with the government to get certain things done for the country. You know, as leader of the opposition and as Prime Minister, the President requires to consult on certain appointments. One of those appointments is appointment to jobs in the Election and Boundaries Commission. I, as Prime Minister, was consulted by the President, who presented to me the work of the Independent Service Commission, who looked for someone to fill a vacancy in the EBC as director, advertised the position. I am told after that they had 14 applicants. They went through them. 3 of them qualified for the job. But the one that was most qualified was the senior lawyer who were already in the EBC. The president asked me, as he's required to, whether in fact as Prime Minister I have any objection to what the commission has recommended to him. I had absolutely no issue. I didn't even know the person. I trusted the commission's judgment and its independence, and the government had no reason or no basis to object. So I wrote back to the president saying, no objection. They went ahead and they appointed the person. The next thing I know, the opposition is now leading a charge that this person is a cousin of some person and a cousin of some person, and therefore we have in Trinidad and Tobago some underhandness and some problem with our Election and Boundaries Commission. You know? And he must have asked her, because the same way he asked me as Prime Minister, he is required to ask the opposition leader. Well, since they're querying the lady's appointment, I want the opposition leader to tell this country, as I have done now, whether she had told the president that she had no objection, or whether she had objected then and he went over her head and did it. Tell the country that. Transparency, openness, because this is the Election and Boundaries Commission. And these are the people who, in the last general election, when there was heavy rain in Trinidad, and the EBC did the logical thing of keeping the doors open, announcing it for all parties to continue to take part in the process. They took issue with the results of the election and said that they were going to take 6 PNM seats that were won by the PNM to court and charge the EBC for wrongdoing. Apparently, the EBC's wrongdoing didn't affect the 18 seats that they won. It only affected the 6 that the PNM won, what they call 6 marginal seats. We warned them. We warned them. Do not nasty up this country's name. Kamla Prasad Bisasa was on a platform calling the government of Trinidad and Tobago an illegitimate government, put on the robe that she gave herself as senior counsel, took her tribe into the court. When they won access to the court, when the court gave them a go-ahead, give them leave to go ahead and do it, they trumpeted all over the country that they had got victory against the PNM, and the press was in tow. The PNM lost. That wasn't the case. That was leave to argue the case. First case was lost, was the very Maxi Coffee, who they're saying his first cousin has been appointed. And may God bless him, he's out there fighting for his life, and hope he recovers and come back to us. We all pray for him and his family. But he was the first one who went to court and said, listen, the law says that a claim like this has to be made within a certain time. They have come out of time, and therefore it must be thrown out. The court agreed and threw it out. They owe him costs for that. The other 5 PNM members had to go through the court. We went through the court to the end, and we won in the appeal court. PNM members won. But when we objected to leave being granted to have this matter go through the court, and the court ruled in their favor, the PNM members had to pay cost. The court ruled that they had to pay cost because they objected and lost. Those matters took 3 days in the court. The UNC put in a claim for those costs for the 3 days. $6 million. Wait. As Sitting Bull said, today is your day, Custer. My day will come. And the Indians' day did come when they met Custer at Little Bighorn. So 3 days is $6 million. 5 PNM MPs and 14 days in the course, 2 or 3 senior councils and a battery of juniors, and PNM win. How much you owe the PNM? How much you owe the PNM? Because the court has ruled that they must now pay cost. In San Fernando, Mr. Gopi Singh owes Faris Alwari. In St. Joseph, Vasant Bharat owes Terence Dale Singh. In Tunapuna, one owes Edmund Ford. And in Brent Sancho, he owes Glenda Jennings Smith up the road. So I am saying tonight, as leader of all those PNM members, We're collecting every cent. We tired warn people in this country, don't follow Kamala and her foolishness. They were warned. But they decided, and by the way, you have money to get to, you know. Because the EBC was made party to the proceedings. And the EBC has now been awarded costs. So they have to pay millions of dollars in costs to the EBC. And every cent of it is going to be collected by the Office of the Attorney General. You see, it's against that background that they would not learn. Even before the lady take up the job in the EBC, they start with their bacchanal about she's somebody's cousin and she's trying to give the impression that we in this country can conduct our affairs without corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, we went to Parliament to change the law, to remove preliminary inquiries from our proceedings. You know the airport matter still going on at preliminary inquiry stage? 17 years people have been charged, but they cannot or they will not allow their day in court in the same matter. People in America were charged, went to jail, come out of jail, all kinds of things. In Trinidad and Tobago, we are still conducting preliminary inquiry. The same thing with those matters in the Marseille matter there. What is happening there is that they're having a trial before the trial, preliminary inquiry. And what we have seen, what we know, is that it grinds the legal process and the justice system to a halt. And those who have money have now shown us that they could use that system to prevent themselves from answering in a court for any crime or any criminality as long as they have deep pockets. The vast majority of people in this country want an end to preliminary inquiry. We have an independent office of the DPP whose job it is to determine whether a person when charged by the police, if the police has made a sufficient prima facie case, and if the DPP isn't satisfied, he could end the matter right then and there and nobody could say anything about it. We have a DPP who can say, go and investigate and then instruct to charge, because his job, he has the power to begin a proceedings or to end the proceedings all on his own authority in his own office. And no other office in this country could interfere with the DPP when he or she is doing that. So therefore, we don't need any preliminary inquiry to have a trial before a trial. But when we went to Parliament to remove that so we can get speedy justice and unclog the courts, this PNM government could not get one vote in the Parliament from anybody who wasn't PNM. Everybody else say leave it so. That is what is going on in Trinidad and Tobago. Leave it, we all know what's going on, you know. But we could not get one vote, not even from the independents. Ask yourself, what is going on in this country? Ask yourself, why is it that this government came into office and one of the first things we did was to get some experts to review our healthcare delivery system? And they did a wonderful job and documented to us what is going on and made recommendations to us and so on and so on and so on some fundamental matters with respect to healthcare delivery. We took it to the Parliament and said this is a matter for the Parliament to adjudicate upon. And we will then hope to get parliamentary approval for some of the far-reaching things that have to be done. We took it to a joint select committee of Parliament. Guess what? Once again, the leader of the opposition will not appoint members to the joint select committee to look at the healthcare delivery system, and as a result of that, it can go no further. Do you believe that? Is that the action of patriots? But you know, something has happened recently. You go to bed one night, and the leader of the opposition is elected for 3 years, and should stay in that post until December 2018. You get up next morning, and you hear the leader of the opposition call a snap election on herself. But she has not resigned there. She hasn't resigned the post. She just called a snap election on herself. And of course, that immediately has two voices in the party. One is, why are you doing that? It's not legal. It's not in keeping with our constitution. And the other one, the majority of voices, is that we support the leader. And when you ask the leader, why are you doing this very unusual thing? Hear the answer. The PNM government is about to collapse. And in preparation for the collapse, the imminent collapse of the PNM, the opposition leader in the UNC called a snap election to make herself ready for the election that is due. Now, you know I don't interfere in UNC business. But since the reason for this unusual development is because of something PNM, I'm invited into the house. Let me give you the real reason. The real reason for that unusual development is that the leader of the opposition, if she remains in that office for an election in 2018, between now and 2018, she sees the procession to the courthouse of all of her minions. She sees the damaging things that are going to happen. And she knows that the best chance that she has of holding on to the office is to get elected now for 3 years, and it doesn't matter what happens after, she is there in 2020. That is the reason. Because already, she's seen her darling Attorney General Anand Ramlogan arrested and will be prosecuted. So between now and 2018, he back and forth in the courthouse. She's seen the work being done by the Office of the Attorney General, where Munilal, a minister who was leader of government business in the House, has serious questions to answer, and the documentation is going to sink him in quicksand. She sees that coming. She also knows what the government is doing with respect to other matters of a similar nature. And she knows that 2018 is hell on powder house as far as the UNC is concerned. So she's trying to get herself elected in peacetime so that the war against crime will not prevent her from being the leader. But I want to tell all the people in the UNC something. If you notice, look who jumped out to give their support to her. The same Munilal. Then you have Rambachan. He is the one who oversaw as minister the removal of the clause trying to prevent us from firing OAS. He jumped out. You remember Anil Roberts? After she went to Parliament and exposed the audit report in the full knowledge that that will allow Anil to go to court and have the report quashed. You remember the day when the report was quashed and Anil sang victory? She called a public meeting in Diego Martin the same night and put Anil on the platform and offered Anil a senatorship. You remember that? But now things don't look so bright. All of those people who are running behind Kamala Prasad Bisesa as leader of the UNC from the last government, all of them have personal reasons to do that. And what they desperately want to do, and what they're desperately hoping, is that we will come out of office before these matters come to a head. And that's where this stupid talk comes from about the government about to collapse. Dream on, Kamala, dream on. That is the singular reason why there's going to be an election in the UNC for the leader who has a mandate until December 2018. But tonight I want to say to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, these are difficult times. We've said so to you straight up and up front. Today, even as we mentioned to you how much hundreds of millions walk out the parliament, walk out the company, out of the treasury, and from the loans they took, 3 weeks before the election, cast your mind back. She was elected for a 5-year term. The 5 years ended in May. She didn't call the election for that time, you know. The 5 years finished. And then the law allows, when you do that, in case you want to stay forever, the law said no, you have 90 days to call the election. She called the election on 12th of June and took every single day that the law allowed. It is during that extra period that this money you heard about tonight was taken out, you know. If that could have happened in 3 weeks, so obscenely in the election campaign period, God alone knows what happened in the 5-year period before. But you all know what happened, and you're not God. You're the people of Trinidad and Tobago. You know what happened in the 5-year period. What you saw there is what happened as they were going through the door. And they have the gall to be talking about this government going to collapse so they could come back in. And then they recruit Jawala Rambaran to join them. And she tells you that Larry Hawaii is the best minister of finance the country ever had. Larry Hawaii is the man who started off Life Sport with $8 million, spent $400 million, and it's when dead bodies start to appear in the criminal environment, we realize what went on there. Griffith was fired from Kamala's cabinet for talking the truth. Remember that? Because in that government, you don't speak the truth. You praise the leader, thief the money, and move on. But last night in the parliament, when Jawala Rambaran came to try to hoodwink the population, the newest shilling in the PNM Bank got up and told him, you all spend, and thief, and that shall be your epitaph. Thief, and spend. Ladies and gentlemen, in these difficult times, you have to decide which side of this issue you come down on. I know that we as a government, we cannot popularize ourselves by giving you this and giving you that. In fact, the hard decisions that we have to make, many of those decisions would be painful. Many of those decisions will cause us to lose friends. But we have to save the country. First and foremost, we have to save Trinidad and Tobago. The one guarantee I want to give you is that we'll do it in a caring and careful manner to give you the best chance and the least pain. But we will do what has to be done. So tonight, I ask you as a people of Trinidad and Tobago, acknowledge your circumstances. At the individual level, see how you could ameliorate hardship on your own circumstance. Whether it is with your gas price, your electricity bill, or even with the food you eat. Take some personal responsibility for ensuring that you and your family do the best you can in a very difficult situation, even at the level of the dollar. This will not last forever. If we do what has to be done, we will shorten the period in which this country is going through what we're going through here. And the one thing that you don't want is a government with weak knees and fearful of the future. We continue to believe that as a people who Eric Williams showed the course, we stay the course with boundless faith in our destiny. Thank you and good night.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you understand why that is the political leader and the prime minister in which we have all faith for strength, for service, for stability. And ladies and gentlemen, to tell us more in song, I welcome Isasha to the stage.
San Fernando, all ready? Yeah. Family, tell me, are you ready? Tell them to build back a country. Bring family, be ready. All ready? Come on. So let's do this. Chicago, are you ready? We rolling with the red army. You for the love of your country. Place your vote for the PNM family. San Fernando, you ready? We rolling with the red army. You for the love love of your country, place your vote with the PNM. Say, come on, my people, let's stand together underneath the red, white, and black banner, yeah. Burn out corruption like leaves, it a scatter. Tricks and insult the people, them flattered. The partnership done sink already. We riding strong with Dr. Kid Rowley. Right leader, right time. I've made up my mind to build. Come on, sing it. Say, let's. I ain't all you. Come on, let's. If you're ready, ready, yeah, yeah. We forwarding, we rolling, yo, with the red army. Should be a go, are you ready, yeah? Mr. Hines, are you ready, yeah? Come on, my people, yeah. We up the youth and say God is a Trinity. A blessed nation, the Caribbean envy. All of a sudden, like the place get heavy. Things not go right, God no like ugly. So come on, my people, let's do this together. Build back a nation and come on, say come on, the children deserve better. Brighter days, yeah. Say let's should be a go, are you ready, yeah? We rolling with the red army. You for the love of your country, place your vote with the PNM. Should be a go, are you ready, yeah? Brighter days, brighter days. Listen, if don't talking to Rowley, I lead a phenomenon. The partnership full of papyrus and criminal. Send for the duck, the state is critical. It's 32 for farm, and his country's political structure. And he is the doctor we need. 24 years veteran, he born to lead. On the 7th of September, the country a bleed. For Dr. Rowley and the PNM. Let's do this. I ain't all you. Let's do this. One more time, San Fernando. You for the love of your country, place your vote with it. Let's do this. Should be a go, are you ready? We rolling with the red army. You for the Let's do this. I want to yell you. Let's do this. Sing it. Let's do this. I know you. One more time. Let's do this. Let's brighter days ahead. Have some faith, yeah. My people, yeah. Let's do this. Are ready? We born ready. Let's do this. You for the love of your country. Place your vote with it. I love everybody. I hope everybody will jump safe. I don't give up hope. Brighter days ahead, yeah. Let's do this. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. And we shall prevail.
Someone left a phone on a seat. It's a Samsung.